talk about. There's furore this morning on the front of the Daily Mirror. Richard Tice, disgraceful. Had him on the show earlier. When asked about the heatwave yesterday, launched into a stout defence of, how he feels net zero is a waste of money, and said, come on, enjoy. It's all doom and gloom, and it's good for the English sparkling wine. And the left have got absolutely nuts. But it has focused, I think, a lot of people's minds on net zero today. There are sort of 3 or 4 things, Daniel, that people seem most concerned about in this country, understandably. Immigration, energy costs, I think, most definitely the welfare budget, but also net zero. £125 billion in the next few years to achieve a target that means what? 1% of carbon emissions across the world. The naysayers will say, look at what's happening climate-wise. Other people, I'm one of them, says, hold on a minute, we're skint. We've got no money. Let's start drilling in the North Sea. Let's, yes, be concerned, but let's get our priorities right. Where do you stand on that, my friend?
Yes, I think there's been a massive shift in attitude over the last 20 years. Net zero was very popular, not just with the politicians, but it polled very well 20 years ago. And I think that's because 20 years ago, you could argue that somebody had to take a lead and that if Britain showed kind of moral leadership, the rest of the world would follow. They'd copy us. In fact, we can now see that the only thing that almost every other country has learnt from us is what not to do. So there is a futility with pushing ahead on our own with minimal impact, because, as you say, it's 1% or less of the world's total emissions. And indeed, we have done more carbon reduction than any comparable country. So I think there comes a point when you have to say, if we have failed to stop the carbon emissions that would slow climate change, then what can you do to adapt? And I think that's a perfectly reasonable conversation that we should all be having. And we should also say something else, which is that climate change, almost by definition, is going to have positive and negative aspects, right? So Richard Tice is not wrong about that. If you absolutely refuse to see that there could be any positives, if you rule that out, then you're not really coming at this as a scientist, you're coming at it as an evangelical.
It is about, though, is it not? It's interesting what you said. I feel people are more prepared now to jump up and down and have their say. And I do think, this sort of hand-wringing, let's lead the way. For years we seem to welcome people, give the most money to everybody else, and have people come here and I think people have hardened, as you said, to hold on a minute, I'm doing all the right things here. I'm paying my bills and paying my tax and bringing my kids up and not committing crime. And that's why I think people are so angry about immigration. I think that's why they're so angry about, finally, the acknowledgement there are feckless people taking advantage of the welfare system, rather than sitting there going, yes, it is the greatest invention in the modern world, but actually we need to understand the system's being taken advantage of. So many things need change in this country. I've so much I want to ask you about. Reform yesterday, Robert Jenrick in a pair of glasses. I thought he started to look like Andy Burnham, actually. I would put that to him at 9 o'clock. He was talking about how Reform have a plan to save $50 billion, Daniel, off the benefits bill. I think, again, everybody's view has hardened on that. And finally, people are accepting that there are people who are taking advantage. We got a lot of kickback, though, yesterday from genuine claimants going, what does this mean for me? And I guess you'd agree with me. If you're going to improve a system, for example, seeing people face-to-face, thank God again, it proves, I guess, or hopefully it will prove, to benefit those people who are genuine, who will be missing out because the money is being taken by other people. Am I right?
Yeah, but we should say something, and it's a hard thing that needs saying right at the start, which is that in a country the size of ours, wherever you draw the line, there are always going to be people on the wrong side of it. There are always going to be tough cases. There is no welfare system that you could possibly have, no set of rules in a nation of 70 million, which will not result in some deserving people losing out and some undeserving people qualifying. And that is intrinsic in having any kind of benefit system at all, right? The perfection is not for this life. So having those people phoning your show and complaining does not invalidate a reform. No. So that's the first one, and that's a really important point to make. Having said that, yes, it is really encouraging that now both the Conservatives and the Reform Party, although they're attacking each other, are reaching quite a common position on this. So, as you'd expect, the Tories are saying Reform is being unrealistic. There's no way they'll save 50 billion. It's a figure they plucked from the air. And Reform are saying you're being too unambitious. And that's great. I love the fact that we're having that debate. But if you look at what they've got in common, taking benefits away from foreign nationals, giving people support in kind rather than just cash handouts. By the way, really worth dwelling on that for a moment, right? If you have got, say, anxiety, how does £100 a week help your condition? How does it make you, I mean, I'm sure you'll appreciate it, but so would anyone else, right? So moving from cash to actual support, I think is really valuable. Reassessing a lot of the claims we have, and disqualifying, this has been the big increase, disqualifying minor mental health conditions or neurodiversities as being equivalent to a physical disability. If we have now got to the point where 1 in 4 adults is classifying as disabled, then that word does not mean what most people understand it to mean.
And I couldn't agree more. And you know, I always try and personalise this. That's how you do this job. And I had a stage 7 years ago, I had a breakdown, and I would never disrespect anybody who's been in that position. I was there, right? But you will never convince me that 8 million people have mental health or disability in this country, and you will never convince me that people who have mild anxiety and mild depression, somebody once described depression to me as A to Z. It's a grey day, and the end you have a frontal lobotomy. Like, so I'm being completely serious. There's lots of people who have a bad day, who feel down. Sitting on your own, isolated, not working, pumping yourself with whatever is not going to change the way that you feel. Getting out to an environment, to fresh air, to I think, to have a purpose is absolutely, and I am so for this because, and I was talking about this community service years ago, before Generic was probably even born. I think it's absolutely right to say to people, you know, we will do our best to support you, to help you, but we want something back. We want something back for what we're giving you. And if a bit of community service helps us, and it gets you out of bed, and it gets something on the CV, and it helps the community in its entirety, that's a good thing, a great thing.
So there's no question that being depended on is a very, very good thing for most people who have mental health conditions. It's exactly as you say. It's a sense of purpose. It's a sense of being needed. I mean, that's focusing you on things other than your own condition. In all the evidence we have is that is an extremely good tool of getting people into a better place mentally. I'm slightly skeptical of the community service thing because I think the cost of it could be so astronomical. Robert Jenrick said 330,000 people are in this condition who could, if they all turned up, can you imagine the total chaos of trying to get councils to find stuff for them to do? So I think there was a little element of the thick of it. There was a little element of Malcolm Tucker about that, because he's saying something that is going to poll very well, it's going to be very, very popular, but may not be practicable. And if it were practical, it would be very expensive. But I think the general principle that you just said, that people should not expect unconditional benefits, I don't think anyone listening is seriously going to disagree with that.
Final thing for you, and I love having you on the show, and I mean that. We wanted to know from everybody, where were you when that emergency alarm went off last Friday, Daniel?
I was like everyone else, gnashing my teeth, thinking what kind of a useless, servile people will support this kind of nannying from their government. I mean, did I really need a shrieking alarm to tell me not to go around starting fires? If there really were an emergency, if there was some incoming Iranian drone or something, you know, we've cried wolf now, haven't we?
Well, we have cried wolf, and in fact, hundreds of thousands of people have now sussed out that they're going to turn off the alarm so it doesn't actually work, which is utterly, utterly appalling. But listen, great to have you on, my friend. Really, really appreciate your time as ever. We'll have you on again soon. Thank you so much indeed. Lord Daniel Hannan from the IEA, Director of the Institute for Economic Affairs. Top man.